Advances in technology are changing the way we understand brain activity and diagnosing potentially deadly mental health disorders. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death in the United States, according to the CDC. As part of Mental Health Awareness Month, Nikki Battiste shows us how researchers are using brain scans to spot harmful thoughts. Nikki, good morning.
Good morning, Don. Good morning, everyone. We visited Carnegie Mellon University to take a look at research led by psychology professor Dr. Marcel Just. He spent decades developing a sophisticated system to try and read our minds, and now he's making a breakthrough into suicidal thinking.
We found that there were certain concepts that were altered in people who thought about suicide, and our method was able to detect those differences and analyze exactly what the differences consist of.
That method begins with a sophisticated piece of equipment, a functional MRI.
With fMRI, you see a picture of the brain's activities.
So you're saying every thought idea in our brain has its own specific pattern?
Yes. And what's really, I think, fascinating and relatively new is the patterns are similar across people.
Unless you have suicidal thoughts, then they're altered.
That's what psychiatric illnesses do. They change the way you think, and this method can, I think, identify those changes.
These images show two people thinking about the word death. This one has thought about suicide, this one has not. The colors represent brain neurons.
When you see dark blue, that means very little firing.
And the red is telling you
that you get activation related to self-thinking when they're thinking about death. But among people who have made an attempt, you see even more of this dark red.
34 people took part in his latest study. 17 of them never had suicidal thoughts, but the other 17 had. And over half of those 17 had even attempted suicide in the past. These second-by-second snapshots show clear differences in the brain patterns when the participants were asked to think about different concepts like carefree, praise, and death.
This is
our thought library.
Those snapshots were then analyzed by this complex computer server, storing hundreds of thoughts by hundreds of people with the power to search for unique patterns.
We can tell whether somebody's feeling anger or happiness or sadness. We can tell what number a person's thinking. We can tell what topic a person is reading a paragraph about.
Dr. Just's method was 90% accurate in determining who had past suicidal thoughts and attempts.
How might Dr. Just's research change the future of suicide?
If we could understand the neurobiology underlying the drive to harm oneself, then we would be able to design better therapies aimed at reducing that desire. The treatments that we have now don't work all that well.
Dr. Joshua Gordon, director of the National Institute of Mental Health, thinks Dr. Just's work could lead to more effective treatment.
So potentially in 10 years, I might go to the doctor's office, electrodes are put on my brain. They will be able to tell whether I have a mental illness, whether I'm suicidal, possibly.
It's slightly optimistic, but not impossible, maybe 20 years.
The National Institute of Mental Health recently awarded Dr. Just and his team a $3.8 million grant to continue their research. They have already proven their method works to identify autism spectrum disorder. In the future, Dr. Just hopes to apply his approach to other psychiatric disorders like depression, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. Such amazing work they're doing.
This is brilliant. To better understand the neurobiology of the brain, these causes that are in some ways out of our control to find treatment, I think are so important. That's really exciting and needed.
And that point is so interesting, which is to say that you know, your brain is doing things you can't think your way out of.
Right.
That there is wiring at play here, which would help at least to understand the condition you're in.
You know, understanding our brain neurons is so important to possible treatment. And Dr. Just says he and his team are about 3 years away from being able to completely read our minds within reasonable accuracy. I asked him yesterday, if I'm thinking, I want to win the lottery, when might you be able to identify that thought in my mind? He said, oh, we can already do that.
But think about, like, if you were able to use that neurobiology in those scans, right? Certain types of medications that you're using, whether they're working or not, whether exercise affects and change, whether the diet that you're engaged in affects, and you could see the changes. That would help us all find ways to treat issues that we have.
Yes, revolutionary work that they're doing for sure.
Thank you. I liked that piece a lot.
Nikki.